Hi everyone, welcome back to Literature Analysis Walkthrough. This is lesson 4. Today we're going to talk about theme. So in my previous videos I talked a lot about theme zone and how important it is when generating a thesis statement. Even if you don't have to write an essay, this mode of thinking is really useful. You watch a movie like The Avengers or something like that, and you're kind of doing this in your head. You're rolling it around. What is it about? It's about A, B, and C. You might be going this far. You might be saying, well, what is the author trying to say about A, B, and C? If you're thoughtful, you might be thinking about these questions. And if you're really thoughtful, you might be arguing with your friends about the different cinematic techniques that the filmmakers were using to create that particular meaning or that particular effect. So we do this anyway. When you're forced to write an essay for university or high school, you have to just do the same thing more actively, more consciously. So in my previous video, we walked through things like this. I gave you lots of model. I gave you 4 or 5 model thesis statements, walking you through them. So go back and have a look at that if you're not quite sure what I'm talking about. But right now, we're going to move on to common theme zones. Of course, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of theme zones that we could talk about. But as a teacher, these are the ones that keep coming up again and again and again. I've fine-tuned this list over a number of years, and you can't avoid these. I think almost any novel that you will be given in first-year university courses or high school, you could pick from this list, and that book and this theme zone will be covered in that book. Shakespeare, for example, loved these 2 themes. They're all over the place in Shakespeare. Appearance versus reality is unavoidable in a lot of literature, if not maybe almost all of it. Is all literature about what appears to be true and what really is true? Think about it. Think about your young adult fiction. These are massive. They're huge. Love, death, family, of course, the passing of time, childhood. So these are the ones that you were going to encounter, whether you like it or not. But again, a lot of students are frustrated because they know that the theme is about tradition. But look at what I said. What I just said was a very grade 5 statement. The theme of this play is tradition. It doesn't get you very far. It's a good opening statement, fine. But if that's all you can understand about it, then you're not really doing anything interesting. Once you got your theme zone, it is time to ask some questions about that theme zone to get you somewhere where you want to be as a thoughtful critic of that work. So let's look at those questions now. So the first question you should be asking once you've got your very general theme zone, that's why I use the word zone, because it's very general and not very helpful at that level, is some variation of what kind of love are we talking about? What kind of death are we talking about? There's different kinds of death. You could have this pointless, senseless, needless death, like a World War I battlefield poem, or you could have a very honorable, noble, heroic death where somebody sacrifices themselves for somebody else. So you want to fine-tune your understanding of that theme zone as much as possible before you even ask the next question, which is, what does the author seem to be saying about noble death? Okay. Love, for example, when you did Romeo and Juliet for the first time, you understood in your bones that the poem was about young romantic love, but I bet when you wrote your first paragraph about Romeo and Juliet, all you said was love. You weren't precise in your language. We tend not to be when we're just thinking about something. When we're not trained as thinkers, we just think very generally. You're in grade 11 and 12 in university now, and so you're supposed to be thinking precisely. You're supposed to be training yourself to think precisely. Romeo and Juliet's not about old romantic love. It's not about an older couple that love each other. It's about young romantic love. There's different kinds of love, and you've got to distinguish them. There's pet-owner love, there's father-daughter love, and father-son, and mother-daughter love. There's all kinds. So be precise. That's the first question. This next question is really important to help you get a wider view of your topic. Very often I'll tutor a student and I'll give them a poem and I'll say, okay, what's the poem about? Where are you going to go with your thesis statement? What do you think the theme is? And they'll say A. I say, okay, prove it. And then they give me some evidence from the text. I say, yeah, you're perfectly right. That sounds reasonable. You could write a good essay on that. Then I ask them, just for fun, I say, can you prove the exact opposite of what you believe to be true about the text? And very, very often they'll start digging into that poem. If it's a good poem, they'll dig into it and they'll find, he's been saying A, but here he seems to be suggesting a B. And so even if there's a weight put on one side or the other by the author, they might agree with this more, but they might acknowledge that there are other elements involved in life, in this area of life that the poem is discussing, or the play or the movie. So life is complex, and art holds a mirror up to this complexity. Shakespeare, a Shakespearean play is packed. It's like a tangled garden. It's a total mess of humanity. There's so much going on in every one of those Shakespeare plays that you could unpack them almost forever. So don't stay with your first impression. I sometimes challenge my students to come up with, if you like doodling, take a piece of paper and a pencil and draw this grid with a negative and positive, and start brainstorming all the negative things that Shakespeare's saying about young love on one side and all the positive things he's saying about it on the other side, and try to put some evidence to that. And you can do this with a lot of things. So again, it's important to ask this question: what are the negative, both the negative and the positive aspects of something? It's a good place to start. It'll get you really, really far. Then when you write your essay, you might want to focus on the positive. You say, no, I think Shakespeare's coming down more on the positive because the death heals the wasteland and more people benefit from that, or whatever. Or you could say, no, it's a total tragedy, and Shakespeare's saying that, oh, isn't it a shame that young people are so foolish with their love? Okay, so that's the second question, to get you deeper and deeper into the meaning. So the last question you should ask is how the theme zone relates to the other elements of the text. And I've got a really funny story for this. It's not just one story, it's a whole amalgam of my whole teaching career and tutoring career. I was teaching a long poem one day with a student, one-on-one, and we were working through it. It wasn't easy. It was a difficult poem. And we got about 2/3 of the way through the poem, we got to the image of a whale. And I asked him, of course, if you're reading a serious poem, a difficult poem, and there's an image of a whale on there, the whale is going to be a symbol for something. So I asked him, what does the whale symbolize? And as a tutor, I tortured him a little bit. It was lots of fun. I just let him sweat. I just gave him a couple of minutes to think about it. And I saw his eyes, and his eyes were wandering up and down this section of the poem, trying to figure out what the whale could symbolize, looking what the whale was doing and how it was being described, its actions and things like that. And he was getting nowhere. I asked him one simple question, and it clicked for him. He understood it right away. I said, what's the poem about? Because we talked about this. He knew, we worked our way through it. We knew the theme zone. I said, what's the poem about? And he said, death. And I said, what does the whale symbolize? And he said, death. It's a real no-brainer, but a lot of students don't put those two things together. You're going to be sitting tests. You already have been sitting for tests, and you're asked that exact same question. What does the whale symbolize? What does the apple symbolize? What does the cat symbolize? And if you're too focused in this particular zone, you're not even considering what the rest of the play or the poem or the movie is about. That's how themes work. That's how theme zones work. A poem or a play or a movie has something that it's about. It's the author's intention. Now, people might argue about the author's intention, but yeah, fine, go ahead and do that if you want to. The author has an intention. A movie is about something. And all the little elements in it, all the little whales within that movie are working hard to develop that grand idea. That's the theme zone. That's what we're talking about. Okay? So use these questions to get yourself into an interesting place intellectually. Don't be lazy. That's what that's about. Okay, the next thing I'm going to look at very briefly is a more detailed look at the particular theme zones, and I'll explain that. So this last part of the video is going to be kind of weird. I'm just going to silently scroll through these theme zones and let you take screenshots. When you arrive at something that interests you or that's important for your schoolwork, screenshot it and read through this and see if there's anything useful here. There's too many theme zones and not enough time. I can't do it all. I try to follow my own advice by asking questions and probing as deeply as possible and considering both the negatives and positives of issues like love and death and family, things like that. So hopefully some of this will be useful for you. Let me just say goodbye. That was lesson 4. Thanks for joining me, and join me for my next lesson, which is on argument development, that shall explain how to take your thesis and to prove that your thesis is correct using evidence and argumentation. Okay, here's page 1. That's it. Thanks for joining.